The reservation confirmation came through our system at 3:47 p.m. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Party of 24, Thompson family reunion, November 28, 6 p.m., private dining room. I stared at my office computer screen, recognition hitting like cold water. Thompson, my family. My mother's maiden name, the one she still used for reservations because it sounded more distinguished than my father's. They'd booked Thanksgiving dinner at Harvest and Home, the farm-to-table restaurant I'd opened 3 years ago in downtown Portland. The restaurant they'd never visited because, according to my father, the service industry isn't a real career. The restaurant I owned, that had my name, Natalie Hayes, on the deed. The business license, the James Beard nomination we'd received last spring. They had no idea. 2 days later, my mother called. Not to invite me to Thanksgiving, to inform me where it would be, and why I wasn't included in the seating arrangement. "We've made a seating chart for the adults," she said, her tone suggesting this was perfectly reasonable. "You understand, it's family only." I looked around my office, framed reviews from the Oregonian, photos of my team, the profit and loss statement showing we'd cleared $1.2 million last year. And I smiled. Because in 10 days, my family was going to walk into my restaurant, ask for their reservation, and discover exactly what I'd built while they weren't paying attention. Before I tell you how a Thanksgiving dinner became a reckoning and a family reunion exposed who actually succeeded, hit like and tell me, have you ever been excluded from a family event, only to discover you had complete control over the venue they'd chosen? Because that November I learned that sometimes the best response to "you're not invited" is actually "you're dining at my table." They say success is the best revenge. But sometimes success is just showing up to work on Thanksgiving and letting your family connect the dots. My name is Natalie Hayes, I'm 33, and I've spent my entire adult life being my family's disappointment because I chose passion over prestige and kitchens over corner offices. I grew up in Lake Oswego, an affluent Portland suburb where success meant law, medicine, or finance. My father, Richard Thompson, is a corporate attorney. My mother, Patricia, sits on charity boards and measures worth by country club memberships. My brother, Andrew, followed the script perfectly. Stanford, law school, partnership track at dad's firm, married to another lawyer, 2 kids in private school. He's the son they brag about at cocktail parties. I'm the daughter they explain. I fell in love with cooking at 16, working weekends at a local bistro while my parents thought I was at SAT prep. I went to culinary school instead of college, and my father didn't speak to me for 6 months. When I told them I wanted to open my own restaurant, my mother said, "That's nice, dear, but when are you going to get a real job?" I spent 10 years working every position in restaurants. Line cook, sous chef, kitchen manager, eventually head chef at one of Portland's top restaurants, saved every dollar, built relationships with farmers, suppliers, investors who believed in my vision. 3 years ago, I opened Harvest and Home. Farm to table before it was trendy in Portland, sustainable sourcing, a menu that changed with the seasons and told stories through food. We seated 80, booked out weeks in advance, and had a wait list that proved people wanted what we were creating. My parents came once, for the opening, stayed for 1 drink, left before dinner service. "It's very rustic," my mother had said, the word landing like an insult. They never came back. Never asked how business was going. When relatives asked what I did, Mom would say, "Oh, Natalie works in food service," with a tone that suggested I was waiting tables at Denny's. Last spring, we were nominated for a James Beard Award in the Best New Restaurant category, made the shortlist, didn't win, but the nomination alone was huge. I sent my parents the announcement. My father's response, "That's nice, Andrew just made junior partner." So when their Thanksgiving reservation appeared in my system, I felt something shift. Not anger, curiosity. What would they do when they realized the food service daughter they'd dismissed owned the restaurant they deemed worthy of their family reunion? My mother called on a Tuesday, exactly 12 days before Thanksgiving. "Natalie, I wanted to let you know about Thanksgiving plans." Her voice had that practiced cheerfulness that preceded disappointing news. "We're doing a family reunion this year. Andrew's in-laws, Aunt Marie's family, the Hendersons. It'll be quite large." "Okay," I said, chopping vegetables for that night's service, phone on speaker. "Where?" "We found this lovely new place downtown, Harvest and something. Very trendy. They have a private room." I stopped chopping. "Harvest and Home?" "Yes, that's it. Do you know it?" "I'm familiar with it." "Well, anyway, we've made a seating chart. It's adults only in the main room. Business networking, you know how it is. We thought you'd be more comfortable at the secondary table." The secondary table, the kids' table, At 33, at my own restaurant, you're not seating me with the adults. I kept my voice neutral. Darling, it's just that the conversation will be quite professional. Legal talk, investments, Andrew's clients. You'd be bored. The secondary table will be much more your speed. Because I work in food service. Well, yes, no judgment of course, but you don't really have the background for that level of discussion. I looked around my kitchen, the industrial stove I'd chosen, the custom prep stations, the team I'd built. Behind me, my sous chef Marcus raised an eyebrow. He'd heard everything. So I'm invited, I said slowly. But not to the adult table. You're always invited, sweetheart. We just want everyone to be comfortable. At Harvest and Home, on Thanksgiving. In the private dining room. Exactly. 6 p.m. Don't be late. She hung up before I could respond. Marcus leaned against the counter. Did your mom just uninvite you to Thanksgiving at your own restaurant? Technically, she invited me to the kids' table. Are you going to tell them? I thought about it. Imagined calling back, explaining. But every time I tried to share my success, they'd minimized it. This time I decided they could discover it themselves. No, I said finally. I'm going to work Thanksgiving service like always. And we're going to give them the best meal they've ever had. Over the next 10 days, I planned that Thanksgiving menu with the kind of precision usually reserved for Michelin inspections. Local turkey from a farm in Hillsborough I'd built a relationship with. Heirloom vegetables from 3 different Oregon suppliers. Cranberry sauce made from berries we'd foraged and preserved in September. Rolls from a sourdough starter I'd maintained for 5 years. Everything was a story, a connection, a choice that proved food service was its own kind of mastery. My front of house manager, Claire, reviewed the reservation list. Your mom's name is on the booking. Patricia Thompson, party of 24, private room. She's made some interesting requests. I read through them. Specific seating chart. Separate checks for different families. Instructions that the secondary table should be served after the main tables. Served after. Like an afterthought. We're going to ignore that last request, I said calmly. Everyone gets served simultaneously. This is Harvest and Home. We don't have second-class seating. Claire grinned. Are you going to tell them before they arrive? I'm going to be in the kitchen doing my job. You're going to seat them, take their orders, and provide the service we provide every guest. And when they asked to speak to the owner about how wonderful everything is, she knew my family's type. Then you tell them the owner is in the kitchen and would be happy to come out after service. They arrived at exactly 6 p.m., because Thompsons are never late. I watched on the kitchen monitor as Claire greeted them, as my mother swept in wearing designer everything, as my father handed over his coat like he was doing us a favor by being there. Andrew and his wife, Aunt Marie. The cousins I hadn't seen in years. All of them dressed like this was a business dinner, not Thanksgiving. And there, trailing at the back, awkward and clearly uncomfortable, was my younger cousin Sophie. 19, home from art school, headed toward the secondary table with the other young adults deemed not ready for the grown-ups conversation. Claire seated them according to their chart. Main table, secondary table. I watched my mother inspect the room, not approvingly at the decor I'd chosen, the artwork from local artists I'd commissioned. Taking credit in her mind, probably, for discovering such a place. Then service began. I'd trained my team well. Each course was timed perfectly, explained beautifully. The food was some of the best work we'd ever done. I plated each dish myself, making sure my family got the meal that would prove what I'd built. Through the monitor, I watched reactions. My father's eyebrows raising at the first course. My mother setting down her fork after the turkey, genuinely impressed. Andrew taking a photo of his plate. The whole table engaged in conversation that, for once, seemed to be about the experience they were having, rather than the status they were performing. An hour into service, my mother flagged Claire down. This is exceptional, she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Truly exceptional. I'd like to speak with the owner. Tell them the Thompson party would like to offer our compliments. Claire smiled, the professional smile we'd practiced. Of course, I'll let the owner know. She's in the kitchen finishing the dessert course, but she should be out shortly. My mother looked surprised. How refreshing. A woman owner. I almost laughed out loud. I waited until dessert was served. Pumpkin panna cotta with candied pecans and maple caramel I'd spent 3 days perfecting. When every table had their plates, when the timing was right, I took off my chef's coat, put on the clean blazer I kept in my office, and walked into the dining room. Claire saw me first, nodded toward the Thompson table. I approached slowly, professionally, the way I greeted every VIP table. My mother saw me when I was 3 feet away. Her face cycled through confusion, then recognition, then something I'd never seen before, uncertainty. Natalie, she said it like a question. What are you doing here? Working, I said simply. Claire mentioned you wanted to speak with the owner. The table went silent. Every Thompson, every Henderson, every in-law stopped mid-conversation. The owner? My father repeated slowly. Yes, I'm Natalie Hayes, owner and head chef of Harvest and Home. I let the words settle. Welcome to my restaurant. I hope you're enjoying your Thanksgiving dinner. My brother's mouth actually opened. Andrew, the golden child who always had something to say, was speechless. You own this. My mother's voice was faint. For 3 years now. We opened in October 2020. It's been quite successful. I gestured around the room. The private dining space you're in? I designed it. The menu you've been enjoying? Those are my recipes. My relationships with local farmers. My team's execution. Aunt Marie found her voice. You're the chef? The owner? Yes, the one who works in food service. I looked at my mother. The one you seated at the secondary table, because I don't have the background for professional conversation. From the kids' table, Sophie started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder. Aunt Natalie owns the restaurant. This is the best Thanksgiving ever. My father recovered first, his lawyer brain pivoting to damage control. Natalie, we didn't know. I know you didn't. I told you 3 years ago I was opening a restaurant. Sent you the announcement. Invited you to events. You came once and never came back. I kept my voice level, professional. You don't know because you never asked. We thought. My mother trailed off, realizing how any completion of that sentence would sound. You thought I was struggling, waiting tables, barely getting by. I smiled. I'm not. We did $1.2 million in revenue last year. We employ 32 people. We were nominated for a James Beard Award, and we're booked solid through New Year's. The silence was absolute. Enjoy your dessert, I said. It's on the house. Consider it my Thanksgiving gift to the family. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Mom? Everyone at this restaurant is seated equally. We don't have secondary tables. Everyone gets the same service, the same respect, the same excellence. That's how I run my business. I walked back to the kitchen, where my entire team had been watching on monitors. They broke into applause. They stayed through dessert. Paid their bill, full price, despite my offer to comp it. Left generous tips. Filed out slowly, quietly, with none of the loud performance they'd entered with. Andrew caught me before leaving. Nat, I didn't know it was this successful. You never visited. I should have. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. I'm sorry, for wrong. I didn't know what else to say. Sophie hugged me on her way out. I'm coming back, she whispered. And I'm bringing all my art school friends. And I'm telling everyone my cousin owns the coolest restaurant in Portland. My parents were last. They stood in the entryway. My mother's earlier confidence completely gone. Natalie, she started. We owe you an apology. Yes, I said simply. You do. We didn't realize. We should have supported. You should have asked, I interrupted gently. At any point in 10 years, you could have asked how I was really doing. Instead, you made assumptions and treated me accordingly. My father cleared his throat. We'd like to make it up to you. Perhaps we could book another reservation? I smiled. You're welcome to. We're typically booked 3 weeks out, but I can have Claire find you a table. You'd want us to come back? Dad, I want you to see me, actually see me. Not the daughter who disappointed you by not going to law school, the woman who built something real. I gestured around my restaurant. This is what I chose, and it's good. It's really good. My parents came back, once in December, tentatively, then again in January, bringing friends. By March, they were semi-regulars, and my mother had stopped introducing me as in food service, and started saying my daughter owns Harvest and Home. Progress, not perfection. Andrew and I have lunch monthly now. Sophie did bring her art school friends. They're some of my favorite regulars. We won the James Beard Award in May, Best Chef Northwest. My parents were there, front row, crying when they announced my name. We're so proud, my mother said afterward, and this time, I almost believed her, but the biggest change was internal. I stopped waiting for their validation. Stopped trying to translate my success into terms they'd understand. This restaurant, this team, this work, it was enough, because I said it was enough. If this story resonated, drop a comment. Where are you listening from, and have you ever been underestimated by family, only to prove your worth in the most satisfying way? This is Calm Verdict Stories. I'm Natalie, and this is what happens when the family that excluded you doesn't realize you own the venue. To everyone building something your family doesn't understand, keep building. One day, they'll make a reservation at your table and finally see what you've created.